Farm4Profit podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit podcast.
Hey listeners, welcome back to the Farm4Profit podcast. Got Tanner sitting here on a solo hosted show today. Excited to bring this conversation with one of our virtual guests for you. But before we get into that, wanted to say thank you. Always appreciate you as a listener. Whether it's a busy season, you're in the cab, or it's a little bit slower and you're listening from your office, we always appreciate you tuning in. And we appreciate your feedback because guests like today only come when you provide us those suggestions. You can connect with us at connect@farm4profit.com. So that is at farm4profit.com. You can send us an email there or text or call us 515-207-9640. Been a long time since I hosted a show by myself, but exciting for me, even though Corey overslept this morning. He'll probably be here a little bit later to be able to tackle the conversation that we're going to have today with Garth Redifer. What a name to go by. Kind of jealous, but he is the Vice President of Sales at Power Service. And as the months get colder here in Iowa, and for our friends around the Midwest, I know Power Service is a household name, Garth, but that might not be exactly what we're here to talk about today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. And you're right. You know, winter is getting upon us. I said we've seen some cold weather move through, but that's for nearly 70 years. That's kind of been synonymous with Power Service. And people think of Power Service, they think of cold weather. You know, with the changes in diesel engines, we've had to become much more than just an anti-gel winter company. And so we've been doing that for, nearly 30 years, kind of diversifying into that type of year-round type of business. But recently, we've launched a new product that's going to address some of the more common concerns that people are facing today with the newer diesel engines, some of the fuel and challenging with the emission systems that we're finding over the road and in the fields and off-road, off-highway equipment where, people are dealing with potential regen issues or DPF issues. And we're just trying to work with this brand new product. Our diesel injector and DPF flush is brand new, been probably a year and a half or so in the making of development and testing, because we're not one of these companies that just comes out with a product for the sake of doing so. We want to fill a need. We want to see what the customers are facing out there and really, fill that little need right there and right then. And so, we haven't launched a brand new product for nearly 20 years. And so with this product, we're very excited about what it's showing, what the customers that have used it are seeing. And so that's what we're here to talk about and kind of go through why and how and what the customers can expect with our diesel injector and DPF flush.
Yeah, it's really neat that our listeners have been expressing some concern over the modern diesel motor and the fuel types and qualities that we've been getting. They asked us to dive into a lot of the questions around how do I ensure I have quality fuel? How do I ensure that I'm buying the right fuel filters? I mean, we've had guests on from Wix Filters in the past to talk about the different quality of filters that you can use on your equipment. But now with the amount of capital that our listeners have invested in anything on their farm with a motor or any piece of equipment that they rely on to start up and run, let alone a diesel engine, is really concerning, which is why we're going to dive into this topic. And there was no better fit than a reliable team at Power Service and the fact you got a new product. So excited that you shared that right away here in the beginning.
Meet Maya Cornheads, built better for over 40 years to power through down corn, high yields, and tough fields without flinching.
These durable, low-maintenance heads mean less downtime, less grain loss, and more profit per acre. They have the option for down corn attachments or direct-driven chopping. They ensure that your combine will move smoothly, fast, and full at all times.
Don't just harvest your fields, conquer them. Visit MayaCornheads.com to find the dealer near you.
We're going to get more into the details of that product as we go on. But first, I want to learn more about you, Garth. Where are you from?
Well, I was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest, kind of in a logging and ranching family. So been around diesel equipment, old John Deere tractors, old Mack, old Kenworth trucks, just a lot of diesel equipment. My grandpa had, my parents were in the timber business as well. And so, there's been a history of dating back to the, say mid 80s, being around, early 80s, even being around with this equipment my entire life. And so there's kind of that background. And then I, through the years, took various paths and led me to Power Service that I started at in 2008. And I was fortunate enough for them to find me at a trade show. I was building gas stations and bulk fuel facilities and, systems at the time. And, Jeff Kramer found me and hired me basically right away to take over the Pacific Northwest region. And so I was able to work with, not only in that Pacific Northwest, working with farmers, ranchers, dairymen, loggers, construction accounts. We had a very diverse amount of type of business up there. And so I was able to work with all these different entities. And so for the listeners that are specific to this, podcast, primarily in the farming community, I have a lot of experience in that side of it. And so, we're trying to work with customers to say, hey, we need that equipment when you get up in the morning. We need, wintertime, we need it to start. And we need it to be reliable for those customers that have, whether it's cattle to feed or obligations in and around the farm. They have to do that. And so that my experience that kind of built me to where I'm at today has helped me kind of relate to those customers and know, hey, what are the challenges that they're facing?
So it is a pretty unique background for you, especially that you were definitely had value in the connections you had in a wide range of those to be able to pull up into Power Service. So what roles did you have from 2008 until now?
So when Jeff hired me in 2008, I was, overall all distribution sales, territory development to, work directly with our retail, distributors, our retail, points of access of our product. But we also had, fuel distribution. So not only does Power Service go, sell it to retail or farm stores, we're also selling to the bulk wholesale fuel distributors that are delivering, bulk fuel to the ranches that have carb locks or bulk fuel facilities. And so we're working with those guys as well to, deliver to like a farmer pre-treated diesel fuel. So winterization or year-round performance side. So a lot of that building up, not only direct relationships with those distributors, but then part of that growth, business growth, was through interactions with the farmers, with the ranchers, with those, trucking companies and things like that. So a lot of background, hands-on experience. And in 2020, I was promoted to take over all of our sales department. And so my family, we moved from the Seattle, Tacoma area to Weatherford, Texas, and took over the role of the vice president of sales. And so now I work with all of our regional managers that are scattered throughout the country and help them continue to develop and build up their regions within our business.
What a year to try to bring a sales team together, not only moving your entire family, but also having to be isolated probably to your home throughout much of 2020.
Yeah, well, it was a very interesting time. We made the decision before, everything broke out with COVID. I hired my replacement up there with all kinds of plans to work a transition directly, traveling, meeting all the customers, explaining, showing him firsthand how it was going to be transitioned and introductions, and what turned out to be virtual. It was a very strange time to try to train somebody new on board, and I couldn't, and a lot of my problem, issues with that were, for 13 years, I developed some very strong relationships with all of my customers. I mean, we like to take pride in the fact that our customers aren't just, it's not a business transaction with our distribution out there. We become, very good, tight friends. And then the end users, I mean, there's a lot of, end users that I worked with through those distributors that I became friends with. And, you had to pick up and move, to a completely different region and different state. and not have an opportunity to say, hey, it's been great working with you. And, thanks for everything you did to help me build the region. I just had to go. And so fortunately in my role now, I can go back, support my regional manager in that region, but also have touch points with those customers and get to kind of engage with them, periodically, not as frequently as I did before, but, still it's every now and again I get to a few times a year.
Yeah. And it seems like that you really cared about those clients to begin with. And I know that you really care about those producers, contractors across this country, because you still attend a lot of trade shows, according to what I was told. And you also do a lot of public speaking, kind of giving back in the form of those types of discussions. Mm-hmm. What do you usually talk about?
Well, just some of the challenges they're facing. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of these people that are out there operating these equipments, whether it's on farms, whether it's logging or whatever industry they're in running diesel equipment. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of people I run into, initially too, that their initial thought is, oh, this guy's not going to tell me anything I don't already know. I've been running diesel equipment for 50 years. But what they haven't been doing, they haven't been running high pressure common rail equipment, and they haven't been running ultra low sulfur diesel or alternative fuels like a biofuel blend or renewable diesel. And so I feel like we can provide not only some insight of what challenges they're facing, and we can relate to it, especially with my past experience of actually hands-on working on diesel engines and being around diesel equipment my whole life from that perspective, but also with the most current information on the challenges they're facing with ultra low sulfur diesel, high pressure common rail, emission systems as we've gone into these newer trucks and pieces of equipment. And so there's a lot of knowledge that we can try to push. And our big thing at Power Service is educate the customers. You're not out there lecturing them and telling them how they cannot survive without your product. That's not our role. Our role is to hopefully through education, they can say, you know what, I have been facing that. I didn't realize there was a solution for that. So that's what myself and all of our entire company really focuses on, is solving an issue, for a customer that's having a problem. And maybe they don't even realize that they're having a problem. And most of the time they don't even realize that there's any solution to the issue that they're fighting, kind of forcing and fighting and type of thing like that.
Well, let's pull a couple of the things that you share with those folks that probably had to pay for conference attendee admission or had to get into these places where you got to speak with some of our listeners for free today. It's exciting to know that our audience, right, full of extremely smart farmers and producers in the ag industry, but also some that kind of like those folks you run into feel like they know a lot, or if not all about it themselves. So what are some things that they may not know or things that they should have concerns of?
Well, the first thing that I've always done, and all my guys go out when they're doing it, if we're meeting, say with a farmer, and they've got on-site fuel storage, they've got tanks on site. The first thing that I want to do is I want to pull bottom samples of those tanks. I climb up on a tank. We have this device called a bacon bomb, and it's basically a fuel thief. You drop it from the top of the tank, hits the bottom, opens a plunger, and it pulls a fuel sample right from the very bottom of that tank. Worst cases, worst conditions possible are in the bottom of those tanks. One of the misconceptions that people have is, oh, my throughput of the fuel, I'm getting a load of fuel a week, or I'm getting a couple loads of fuel a week. I'm not going to have anything. Well, you're never sucking that tank completely empty. And so where do the contaminants, the water, bacteria, growth, where do they go? Right to the bottom. And so as you get a load of fuel, it stirs all that up. And so if a customer's looking to me, say, hey, I want to treat my fuel for an anti-gel, or non-winter, I want to treat it for performance or injector cleanliness and things like that. What do I need to do? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to pull fuel sample, because I could put the best chemistries into that tank to help you with injector cleanliness or lubricity or whatever they're trying to accomplish. But if there's water and bacteria in that tank, it's all for naught. We're fighting something that we need, and we have a solution to that. We're not one of these companies come in and pull a nasty sample out of the bottom of the tank and say, oh, well, your fuel looks terrible. Good luck to you. We come in and pull that sample, and while we're on site, we're able to pump that stuff off the bottom of the tank, help the customer find out how to dispose of that properly. And then we can treat that fuel to kill bacteria, get rid of the remaining water that you can't pump out of the tank. And now they have a clean tank. Now we can go into, hey, is it this product for winterization? Is it, using this product for injector cleaning and combustion improvement, things like that. So we always want to start there. And that's a part where a lot of misconceptions are had because they don't truly understand that, it happens in these tanks and it doesn't matter the throughput. We have truck stops out there that are going through millions of gallons, monthly, and they have bacteria and water in their fuel. Just it's inherent with ultra low sulfur diesel and the environment. These tanks are open draft vented to the atmosphere. And if it's high moisture content, Pacific Northwest, where it's raining a lot, you're going to have a lot of moist air going into that fuel or into that tank and creating a condition where bacteria is going.
So why does it matter? Why do we need to clean our fuel up? Why can't we just run it the way we have been?
Well, premature filter plugging, they rely on these pieces of equipment to go out into the field or on the road and run flawlessly. They want to, in a farmer, you want to go out and plow the field. You want to plow that field and not have any downtime. Well, a lot of times, hey, the filter's plugged or injector failure because the bacteria is very corrosive and it will harm the fuel system if it gets into that equipment. And now they're down. Now they're in the middle of the field hooked to the plow. Whether the simple solution is changing fuel filters, but that's downtime. They're expensive. And, you get into a point where, time's money. And if we can solve an active fuel storage tank and before it goes into that piece of equipment, now they can go to the field and actually do their job that they're intending to do. So there's a number of reasons, but when we get down to it, whether it's trucking or in the fields or whatever it is, downtime's costing them money. Time's money, and we want to try to keep the customers up and running as much as possible.
Are those the two most common fuel-related issues that you see? Is issues obviously with the plugging of a fuel filter, and then two, is it injector failure or premature injector failure?
Yeah, that is, and then and now we're.
Go ahead.
And now that we're getting into more of these, pieces of equipment in the field, having the diesel particulate filters, the emissions devices, running DEF through the systems, that's just another item that they're fighting. And maybe there's a little bit of misunderstanding in that. And why am I having excessive regen issues? Why am I getting my particulate filter going through these regens? I'm using a lot of DEF. Why? Well, that's where kind of led down to this new product that we're going to talk about as well. But, these are things that are brand new in some cases. Some people have been running a piece of equipment for years and they finally had to break down and buy a new piece of equipment. And now it's got this emission stuff on it. And so I know there's, even on the pickups and light duty stuff, people are like, oh, this stuff's ridiculous. I hate these DPF systems and these emission systems. Why do we have to have it? And the fact of the matter is, growing up, we talked about my history. We all remember all this equipment, just black smoke billowing out of it. Nobody wanted to get caught behind a school bus because you just get, covered, in soot. All the equipment was doing it. And so, today, yeah, there's some challenges, but overall, they've accomplished what they were set out to do, But before that DPF filter, that black soot's still happening. It's just getting caught before it can leave the vehicle and go out into the atmosphere. And so that's what we're trying to see. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. And that's what we're trying to go through and explain of, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is why we're doing. That's why our business has grown from just an anti-gel company, a winterization products company. I mean, fortunately, I never, experienced just having anti-gels to sell. By the time Power Service, gave me this opportunity to come to work for them, they had already reached out into the non-winter treated fuel. They not reached out into the fuel tank maintenance. So when I started in 2008, I didn't know a lot about the diesel additive business. but I knew that I could go out and spend my time pulling fuel samples. I knew how to climb on top of a tank and pull a sample. So I spent 90% of my time learning that process, what we're seeing, and helping customers through that side. And then the rest kind of followed along with it.
Speaking of that sample pulling again, just real quick, how often do you recommend a listener does that? Is that something you do yearly? Is it more often than that?
We say minimum once a year. Ideally, we recommend for best chance, at least check it twice a year. Your throughput, the gallons of fuel you're using, it does carry into that, but we want to catch it. The initial time we pull it, generally, it's bad. We have to pump, we have to treat with our biocide and our tank cleaner product. But then, 6 months later, say you go pull that sample, hey, it's still pretty darn good. And now you're only having to use maybe the tank cleaner stabilizer product at that point. So once you get into ideally a semi-annual routine, your tanks stay clean and you can actually run good quality fuel and it stays clean in the storage tanks.
And can we pull the samples ourselves and test it, or how does that process work? Does it always have to be a third party like you?
Well, it's hard to get a device to go, like you can buy these, a bacon bomb online, but they're expensive. And so all of our guys have it. Our distributors out in the field, they have them as well. And so, it doesn't have to necessarily be our guys coming out there. If our distributors are in the area, we can send them out, and most of them are out there actively pulling fuel samples as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. I want to say 24 months ago, whatever it was within the last 2 years. There was a period of like 90 days to where both Corey's family and my family had a semi that had algae in the fuel tanks. Mm-hmm. And it was so strange because we had different fuel suppliers and we couldn't figure out the rhyme or the reason. And the best research that we came up with was fuel in a semi tank on the truck isn't necessarily caused from a fuel source. It's from something that got in while you're refueling the truck up. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate? All I know is it was a royal pain in the ass for the both of us to try and get that fuel system cleaned out, get those tanks emptied and cleaned out. It was a big chore.
Yeah, there's a variety of conditions, and it goes back to the guys that I've dealt with over the years. It's like, I've been doing this for so long. Yes, but with ultra low sulfur diesel, with biodiesel blended, percentages into the diesel fuel in a lot of areas, biodiesel it's a great in a lot of ways, but it is an excellent food source for the bacteria growth. And all it takes for bacteria to start growing is just droplets of water, not even visual to the naked eye, sitting in the bottom of the tank. If there's little droplets of water, we always say a droplet of water is like a skyscraper for bacteria microbes. They eat the hydrocarbons in the diesel fuel, but they live on the oxygen that's provided by the droplets of water. And so then they eat, breed, and create waste. And that's what you start. And they flourish in those particular conditions. And so if you got droplets of water into your semi-truck tank that maybe you don't even see that's sitting in the bottom of the tank, all diesel has a slight amount of bacteria in it because of the crude coming out of the ground. It's right. Got microbes in it. It goes through the refinery process. Those microbes exist in there. We just say if you prevent the conditions in which promote the growth, which is eliminating water, you can't grow bacteria. But if you've got bacteria growing in your fuel, it's because you have water separated in your fuel tank.
Yeah, it seemed very frustrating in the moment and just seemed like it showed up out of nowhere, right? Magically. But when you do start to tie things back like you just discussed, it makes a little bit of sense. Still a frustrating problem.
Yes.
But certainly something that makes sense. I know our listeners would probably appreciate me asking. We've done a lot of episodes. I shouldn't say a lot. We've done a couple of episodes in relation to performance modules, being able to maximize the assets that we have on our farms, whether it's combine truck, vehicle, tractor, with performance modules like those from Steinbauer. Do you and your team have any research tied to the importance of having clean fuel with and combination of a performance module?
So we've looked at, through this testing for all the products, I would say on our new product with the advent of the technology for testing and monitoring and really measuring benefits, this newest product that we came out with, we were able to do more hands-on testing with this product as far as how performance, how it, the benefits in which the customer are going to see that weren't available to us, say 20 years ago or 30 years ago when we came out with our Diesel Clean plus cetane product. And so those are things that we're looking at now. We're able to measure data. We're able to, measure emissions data, measure distance between regens before and after. We're looking at, fuel economy, improvements, power, torque, acceleration type of things. And so there's a lot more at our fingertips today than was previously. And so I feel like we've done a ton with this new product, but we're also looking at, okay, let's take some of those things that we learned on this brand new product that we developed and take them over to our Diesel Clean product and say, okay, if a customer is using Diesel Clean, we know what they have been getting or are getting because of 30 years of experience in working with the customers on that. But now we're able to say, okay, what measurable benefits, what data can we derive out of that based, aside from the 30-year history of fuel economy improvements and, injector reliability and life of the injection system. So we're looking at, okay, emissions data, regen data, all those different things that are facing a customer today to really say, okay, how is this helping the customer? What measurable, benefits? Everybody's looking for, hey, if I'm gonna spend X, I need to save Y. And so then we're looking at the ROI on this. If they're gonna spend what we're asking them for, say, hey, if you're gonna treat all your diesel fuel in a bulk fuel situation like on a farm, if it's gonna cost them 3 or 4 cents a gallon to treat their fuel with an additive, what are they saving on the back end? And that's where we rely on those conversations with those customers to say, okay, there's downtime, there's filter replacements, there's injector issues, there's DPF that's and a lot of that is, yes, there's hard parts that we're measuring, but the hard thing to put your finger on is what's the downtime associated with those repairs? Where's that? And so when we have those good conversations, and a lot of the farmers, a lot of the trucking companies, a lot of the different industries, they can tell us, like I had a trucking company at one point say, if that truck goes down, it's costing me $400 an hour for that truck to be sitting for a maintenance issue, which, and that was probably 10 years ago that the customer told me that. And we know what's gone on. That's only gotten more. I don't know if it's quite $800 an hour right now that it's costing, but it's significantly more than $400. And so that's just one person that's looking at an over-the-road truck fleet. And so that's where we're coming in with these metrics to look and say, okay, here's what you're going to see with this. Yes, it's going to cost you, say, 4 cents a gallon to treat your fuel, but here's what it's going to eliminate. And so when they tally all that up, that 4 cents a gallon of treated fuel at the end of the year pales in comparison to the savings that they're going to see if we truly live up to, and our history has shown we do live up to what we've told that customer they're going to experience.
Yeah, it's been neat as I was preparing for this conversation. The amount of time that you spend researching, providing the studies, making sure that you've got actual results before putting a product out is some things not every company does. But I do kind of want to shift our conversation now, as we are entering winter in the colder seasons. I got two questions. Well, probably more than that, knowing myself. But I want to start off with, our producers are parking some of their pieces of equipment. They may not use all their semis to truck grain this fall, or they may not have any more cattle to haul, and they're going to park their trucks for the winter. We've stopped combining. It's time to put the combine away. What are your advice for that? Because I've heard mixed, I call them wives' tales, right? Tradition. We always put the combine away on an empty tank, or we always put the combine away with a full tank. What should we actually be doing?
Our experience, and my particular experience, has been best to put them away with a full tank. what customers that I recommended to, and we continue to do so, is put our clear diesel fuel and tank cleaner product in there. It's a water dispersant and fuel stabilizer. Put that into the fuel, top the tank off, and then the final step of that, when you're putting away, let it run and cycle the fuel through the fuel system. Dumping it into the tank and topping the tank off while it's parked. Now your fuel in your line, your fuel in your filter, your fuel in the common rail up to the injectors, that's untreated, unstabilized fuel. And I say the same thing during the winter months. Somebody says, hey, I'm going to treat my fuel on a Friday, but I'm going to park all weekend and I'm going to be running on Monday. Well, treat it and then let it run and get that treated fuel through the system. And so your actual fuel in your filter and through, it's going to at least get the engine up and running, is treated as well. And that's a common mistake a lot of people make, is they just dump in the tank and think, everything's good. Well, yes, it's good except for that gallon or whatever fuel is between the tank and the injection system.
Now, can we still do that with less gallons? I'm talking about Farm4Profit here, and if I got to put 200 gallons in my tank over winter to fill it up, or some of these combines 450 gallon, that's a big check for me to have to write. Can I do this with 50 gallon in the tank?
You can, but the head space in that tank, say from the fuel level to the top of it, any of that's going to condensate. And so now that's where people say fill the tank, and it's a equipment tank or a bulk fuel storage tank. I mean, if you have a 10,000 gallon bulk storage tank and you sit there with 3,000 or 2,000 gallons sitting in that tank, well, you have 8,000 gallons of headspace in that tank that's going to just condensate and sweat and drip water into that fuel all winter long. And then you go fill it up. Well, now you have perfect conditions for bacteria growth. You have perfect conditions for, icing issues during the winter months. When you go to, use that fuel, I mean, you get a lot of water into the fuel system. And so that's the old, common thing of, hey, I should top it to remove the conditions in which condensation and stuff like that's going to happen in these tanks.
Harvest season is here, and so is your competitive advantage.
That's right. The Estes XPR3 concaves are a total game changer. Think one concave, all crops, no bands, no switching. From wheat to corn, soybeans, you're rolling non-stop. Backed by their patented technology with 250% more threshing surface, you get cleaner grain, fewer fines, and beast-level capacity, all without trading combines.
If you're interested, visit EstesPerformanceConcaves.com to upgrade your combine today. Estes XPR3, harvest smarter, faster, and better.
We also had a debate in our comment section on a couple of posts that we made. Some producers, and I would say a minority of producers, will go start equipment during the winter months. They set a reminder that the first Monday of the month, they're going to go start the combine, start the truck, start the tractors that they're not using during the winter. Do you have any experience or any data around that's a good idea or not?
I don't know if I have any data around that, but me personally, I've got a few vehicles in my shop that, my old cars. I've got an old Mack truck that I've restored, and I go out there at least monthly and start all that stuff up just to let it run. And I feel like, it keeps the cylinders, moving, keeps oil moving around on the parts, it keeps fuel, from sitting in a carburetor or an injection system. And then also I feel like it heats up seals and it kind of conditions everything. I feel like if stuff sits, it dries out, and your conditions to get a oil leak or a fuel leak or something like that is greater. I mean, I don't have any scientific, data on that or any testing that Power Service has done. But me personally, I believe that running the vehicles periodically is very beneficial for them.
I do find it funny, though, when the TikToks come out right before harvest and let's see if the combine starts, because it hasn't been touched since it was put away last fall. And inevitably, it never does, right? Throw those jumper cables on. Let's prime the fuel and just get it all up and running again. So I figured I have the same belief as you, but it's always good to share that with our listeners. So sticking on the winter, cold weather topic, how does your winter fuel treatment even work? It doesn't seem like that small jug, should be able to do anything.
Yeah, it's it's hard to get conceptually for people to understand our like 26-ounce bottle that treats 100 gallons. How does that treat 100 gallons? Well, it's a super concentrated product. It's 1 to 500 treat ratio product, and so that product is super neat, super contained in that bottle that we put it in, and then when it goes into the fuel, it disperses through, and now you have the right amount of anti-gel, you have the right amount of lubricity, you have the right amount of chemistry in that bottle to treat that 100 gallons. The anti-gel chemistry that we utilize, it's designed to coat the wax crystals to keep the waxes, because they're going to be floating around, the wax crystals. But what you're trying to do is keep them from agglomerating and packing in and building bigger wax crystals. And so we try to keep them as small as possible. There's a point at which the temperature continues to drop. They're fighting and fighting and fighting. And pretty soon, temperature overcomes the ability for that anti-gel to function. And so, our goal is you got the cloud point, you got the cold filter plug point, and then you have the pour point. And the cloud point is where the wax begins to precipitate out of the diesel. The cold filter plug point is where the wax crystals agglomerate and start plugging filters. And a pour point is where the diesel comes to a salt. Our goal, untreated diesel, there's probably sometimes a 0 degree to a maximum of 5 degree separation of untreated diesel fuel from the cloud point to the cold filter plug point. Our goal with our anti-gel, and what it's repeatable over many, many fuels across the country, 20 to 25 degrees of separation between the cloud point and the cold filter plug point. So if somebody's got a plus 10 cloud point diesel and they treat it, our goal is to get to -10, -15 on a single treat. And that gives them quite a buffer in order to do so. If they need more protection, they can double the dosage of that product. So now instead of treating 100 gallons of that 26-ounce bottle, that bottle now will treat 50 gallons. And so now it's more of, it just separates that even further. So if they see more weather coming, they can put a little bit more in. What I will say is, if we know in regions specific, say it's plus 10 cloud point diesel, the biggest mistake that customers make is they wait until it's at 10 degrees or below, and then they dump the product in. It's too late to dump anti-gel preventative type of chemistry in once the fuel's already reached the cloud point and below. So they have to be treating prior to the super cold weather coming in, or at least when that truck, say a truck's been running all day, well, that fuel's warm. Even if it's 0 out, that fuel's probably going to still be 60, 70, degrees in the tank. Dump the anti-gel in at that point. But, the mistake people make is they dump it in after it's cold, while the fuel's cold, and the product has 0 chance of benefiting them. And then they're stuck. And then we go through our procedure with our other product that's a reliquefaction product to help get them up and running. And that creates a whole nother, set of circumstances and questions that they have from there.
Yeah, that I've always wondered, and it makes a lot of sense when you said it out loud. Like, yeah, I can't just throw that in the tank when it's that cold and hope that everything works out just fine. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that you were able to share that. Now, is it a myth that fuel efficiency goes down on treated fuel like that?
No, what happens is, a winter spec diesel fuel, when they start thinning out, wax crystals out of the diesel at the refining process, maybe do they see a drop off on fuel efficiency because of less paraffin, lower BTU content of that diesel fuel. That's where they start seeing some fuel economy or performance, decreases. But like our anti-gel chemistry, we add cetane improver to help with combustion, help with that, reduce that loss of power or efficiency out of that diesel engine. We by adding that combustion improver like the cetane boost, we're able to kind of help balance those power drops or efficiency drops on fuel economy off, as much as we possibly can with that winter diesel fuel.
I'm glad you answered that. I've always wondered. It's great to get that perspective. And I know that I've held you off long enough to even talk about the product that we get to share today. So kind of been dropping tea leaves throughout this episode. What is the new release?
Okay. One last thing I want to just touch on winter before we roll into this new product is there's a question that we get often in our office in all industries. We make a anti-gel preventative, which is our diesel fuel supplement in the white bottle. And that's the product that prevents fuel from gelling as it's getting colder. But then we also have our red bottle, our diesel 911. One thing that I want to make sure customers understand, the diesel fuel supplement, the white bottle, is the preventative product that needs to be in before it gets cold. Diesel 911 is that reliquefaction product that has to be, only be used if they're gelled up and they need to get up and running. Filters are plugged. They can pop the filter off, put this in there and get it up and running. It will not, diesel 911 does not prevent fuel from gelling. So it'll get you up and running. But now once you get some temperature back into that fuel or the ambient temperature raises, now you've got to add diesel fuel supplement into that fuel. Because I say that because we got lots of customers that'll say, I used 911, got up and running. Next morning I was gelled up, and now they're mad at us. But the fact is they used a reliquefaction emergency product, but they need to go back and use the white bottle once they get the vehicle up and running.
Thank you for adding that.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm one of those.
Yeah.
That would have been I used 911 and then was frustrated the next day.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I just had to get that out there since we were talking about winter, because it is a question that comes up every winter at our office when we get the tech calls.
Yes. All right. Now let's move into, there's a couple of jugs on their way to the studio, which we're excited to be able to put to action in the field itself, to be able to see and witness for ourselves. What's being sent over?
So we have come up with a new product, like we mentioned before, called Diesel Injector and DPF Flush. It's a brand new product. Like I said, the first one we've done in 20 years. And this really came because of a need from the customers. I mean, there was concept of this product was brought to us, and we had an engine manufacturer out there that was having some massive injector issues about a year and a half ago. They came to us, hey, what do we have? So we went to work, started figuring out, okay, if we go with this detergent technology, we could try to do this. So we mixed up some product, shipped it up to them, and they were able to run it in a test cell. And within an hour of runtime, they were taking completely plugged up injectors and just running fuel through them with this treatment in it, 100% cleaned up, clear injection. Events were happening, and those injectors were now not plugged. They were functioning as designed. And so we started down this road with them, solving problems. It's an instant in-tank solution that the customer can easily apply. There have been products that have been tried to say, at a service center, you got to take the injection line off, stick it in this jug, and try to run the engine off of this bottle for a little while to try and purge the system. Cumbersome, time-consuming, and most customers out there don't have the ability to do that. And so without a shop. And so we wanted an in-tank instant solution that somebody could buy at a farm store, one of our retail locations, or through their fuel distributors, and be able to dump into their tank, head on down the road or out into the field, and have their engine get back to running the way it was. So we did that. But as we were solving that one need, we started looking at what other benefits are there for this product. What other issues are they maybe not looking at, but we need to kind of dive into. And so we started looking at emissions improvement. So we started looking at DPF, regen cycles, and a lot of equipment will tell you that it's in a regen or it's going into a regen. A customer has certain tells, RPM up, smells like it's getting hot because it's burning out that soot that's caught in that diesel particulate filter, or they're using a lot of DEF. And if they're using an excessive amount of DEF in their system, then probably they have an emissions system problem going on. And so we started looking at, not only does it instantly clean injectors, but once it does that, what else is benefited from it? And so we started looking at EGR systems that are getting cleaned up, mass airflow sensors, and a mass airflow sensors get carboned up. Well, it starts affecting the air fuel mixture going into that engine. So what's it start doing? Compensating more fuel getting put into the engine. So where does that go? Well, more fuel doesn't mean that it's going to run better. It means that there's going to be more unburnt fuel getting pushed downstream to the DPF filter and create more regens. And so that's where we started looking at. And so we started grabbing class 7 and 8 trucks, half tons, 3/4 tons, and started really checking to see, okay, we bought a tool to measure NOx emissions out of the tailpipe and really see, okay, what's this engine doing? And what's coming out of the tailpipe tells you a lot. What we found about what's going on into combustion chambers, what's happening in that DPF filter. And so a lot of our data started there. In my 3/4 ton, some of our regional managers' half-ton trucks that we're looking at, it doesn't tell you how many miles that you're going between regen cycles. You just know, hey, man, I'm putting a lot of DEF in this thing. Why? What? So we bought, Banks makes an iDash gauge that mounts up onto the A-pillar of the truck, and you can program it to tell you, what am I looking for? I want to look at all emission systems on this truck. And like in my 3/4 ton, when I first plugged it in, it said I was going 282 miles between regen cycles. So I treated that truck with the diesel injector DPF flush product, ran one tank full through it, and I went to 444 miles between regens. So it told me that it cleaned a lot of that DPF up, and then it also was cleaning that injection system up so that now we're burning the fuel that's getting put into this engine. And so you're less unburnt fuel getting caught in that filter. And that's where it really kind of began. And so then we took, we had an F-250 that we've owned since brand new, and it's a 2012, and they're welded in systems. That DPF filter is a welded in unserviceable system. And so we cut it off, welded flanges onto it. So now it's a removable DPF filter, and we took it off and we weighed it. We put it back on, and dumped a bottle of this product into the tank, ran it one fuel tank, came back, and in that one fuel tank, it lost 44 grams of soot. So when we pulled that filter off, and visually you could see in the media, when you look down in the grid that you can see in the filter, it went from black and almost gummed up where you couldn't see the squares to a gray that you could actually see the definition of the squares in there. So it showed that here's the before and here was the after. And our brochures and our pamphlets all have that DPF picture in it. And I took those pictures, the before and after, so I know that those are accurately what came out of the same DPF filter.
We got to add photographer to your resume.
Yeah.
Being able to catch it on the front line. So you answered one of the questions I had, that this can be used for any size of motor. Everything from a diesel vehicle, whether it's half ton or a car, I would assume, all the way up to the largest diesel motors out there, right?
Yes. Yeah. And in all of our products we have in a variety of sizes, but all of our products can be used from the smallest diesel engine on the planet to the largest diesel engine ever made. So we've formulated these things to work. And this product, the beauty of it is, yes, it's an injector and DPF flush, but I had questions out when I was at the SEMA show last week. Well, I've got a older diesel truck. Can I run it in S? Yes, because it's going to clean those injectors. They still have dirty injectors. They might not have a DPF filter, but just because it's cleaning the DPF filter doesn't mean that this product can only be used in the modern new high-pressure common rail engines that are equipped with a DPF filter.
And Power Service only has diesel treatments, or do you have gas treatments as well?
No, we only make diesel additives. We kind of focus, our expertise is on diesel and diesel engines, and we really say that and we really feel strongly that we serve our customers better by only focusing on diesel and being on the forefront of new technology. Like the technology that we're using in this new product, we feel strongly that we're equipped to go do that because this is what our focus is. We're equipped to go do diesels and diesels only.
So if our listeners are now curious and want to give this product a try, is it sold everywhere? They got to order it through a website. How's it distributed?
Because it's brand new, all of our products are available at any automotive retailer, farm stores, Walmart, things like that, all across the country. This product being brand new, that the retail side takes some time, but we've got great partners in the ranch and home store type, applications. We have Amazon, we have Walmart.com. We have a variety of sources online that you can look at and order it from, but it's growing every day. We keep an updated website on our powerservice.com page, and it tells a list of retailers that are carrying this product right now. But I can tell you, farm stores throughout the country are really embracing this, and they've been great partners right from the get-go of launching this product out to the market.
And before I wrap up, did we miss covering anything that you want our listeners to know today?
I don't believe so. I think, we're excited about this product, but we're also excited about everything that we've, all the products that we have. This kind of rounds out our family of products. We've always had like we talked about, a winter preventative or winter emergency. We've had our non-winter product with our diesel clean, but this really gives kind of a year-round product to address some of these injector issues or DPF filter issues, and just issues that customers are facing with brand new diesel equipment. And then, the tank maintenance side, I can't say how important that truly is to take serious and really have an idea of what's going on in your fuel tanks.
Well, we appreciate you sharing your knowledge with our listeners, taking time, Garth, to hang out with us. As a reminder, he's Vice President of Sales at Power Service. And listeners, we always appreciate your feedback. I would say get those fuel tanks tested, your bulk storage tanks. And as you prepare for winter, make sure you understand what you need to do to keep yourself out of trouble. So thanks again, Garth. Listeners, we appreciate you as well. So until next time, have a good one.
Farm for Profit Podcast.